I think we're live.
Yep.
I think we are live now. Yep, there we go. We are coming at you live on this Friday night with a lot to unpack after a very eventful day in Dodgerland. We got plenty of news to catch up on, such as the Teoscar Hernández press conference, the signing of KBO infielder Hyeseong Kim, and a whole lot more. And that is not my co-host, Jacob Brownson, next to me. Instead, I'm joined by Mike from DodgersBeat.com, or better known as Doom Sal on social media. So, Mike, before we get into everything about the Dodgers and everything we're going to discuss today, obviously we're here after the holidays. How were your holidays this year around?
Holidays were amazing. Hope everybody else had a Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year. I had probably one of the better ones because I retired from the fire department about 3 days before Christmas. So I'm super excited. And my concentration will be mainly on article writing and coverage over at spring training and all the minor leagues.
Yeah, well, I'm glad to hear that you had a great holiday. And for all of our listeners that, show us support or subscribe to the channel, if you're new coming here right now, we hope you all had a great holiday season and ready to start this new 2025 year. But before we get into all of that for today, we're going to thank our sponsor, BetOnline. BetOnline continues to be the world's most trusted betting platform and your number one source for online betting. From the earliest odds to in-game live betting, BetOnline provides you with all the action and the ability to watch the games as they happen. With the largest selection of odds on everything from football, the NBA, college basketball, NHL, UFC, you name it, BetOnline has it. Head to BetOnline today and don't forget to use the promo code BLEAV for your welcome bonus on your first deposit. That's code BLEAV and you'll get your welcome bonus on the first deposit. BetOnline, the game starts here. And where we're going to start off tonight is we are going to start off with the Teoscar Hernandez press conference. Obviously, last week when we were here on the live, me and Jacob discussed the overall contract, broke all that down, our thoughts and opinions. Mike, I'm interested to see your thoughts on all this entire debacle because it seemed like it was a little bit of a show, this winter between Teoscar Hernandez and the Dodgers. But at the end of the day, they were ending up able to come to an agreement. Before we get into today's press conference, what are your overall thoughts on the deal that the Dodgers and Teoscar agreed upon?
I'm super excited about it. I didn't think that he would not sign with the Dodgers. Everything that went on after the World Series, during the event that they had after the parade at Dodger Stadium, his speech that he had, showed his affection for the Dodger fans and the organization, and just the way that Dave Roberts talks about him, and the way that the front office talks about him. I I didn't really doubt that he wasn't going to come back. There's been some times, during the whole, talks of him, with the front office and the organization. It was just like going, okay, where's this going? Is it going here? Is it going there? There's some stalemates that were going on, but I always thought that he was going to, come back. I'm super excited for it. The fan base is super excited for it. I can't imagine that the clubhouse is not super excited for it because he was a very amazing presence in there, a good positive person, showed some leadership. You could see the way that he kind of not really took Andy Pajes under his wings, but was, mentoring him, in the outfield, joked around with him quite a bit. So overall, I love the re-signing of Teoscar, and he's going to be here for another 3, maybe 4 more years.
And for anybody that doesn't really keep tabs on all of the contract negotiations or the contract details, the Dodgers and Hernandez did come to an agreement on a 3-year, $66 million deal last week. I think what got it over the hump was that the Dodgers ended up including a 4th-year option for $15 million, unless if they want to void it for $6.5 million with a buyout. I imagine Teo's going to play all 4 years probably in Dodger blue, so you're probably going to be seeing it as a 4-year contract compared to a third. $23 million signing bonus. The Dodgers have kind of taken advantage of that right now. And then, of course, you got more deferrals, $23 million added on to the other $8.5 million that he's owed from his 1-year contract that he signed last winter. Overall thoughts on the press conference today? I mean, I feel like he's kind of reiterated what he's said all season, all off season after the parade and the event at Dodger Stadium. He pretty much said it was a priority to come back to the Dodgers, and he said it was quoting him today, he said it was huge for me to sign with the Dodgers because of the fan support. I was going to do everything in my power to come back with the Dodgers. Mike, when you see a statement like that from a player, because I even said it was kind of unusual for a player to share so much in detail how much they wanted to return to a team. And Hernandez ended up, giving us, that wish. He came back to Los Angeles on a very respectable deal. That quote and any other quote that you saw today from his press conference.
I watched the whole press conference. I wrote an article on it. Gave it a little bit of a breakdown of of the conversations between the press and Teoscar and Gomes and Dave Roberts and everybody that was there. Not surprised. I think that the most surprising part about it is how short it was. I thought it was going to be maybe a little bit longer, but it was great to see. One thing that he pointed out, which Dodger fans, I've seen questioned sometimes, like do the players really appreciate us, and when we're in the stands yelling and screaming their name and cheering the team on. Teoscar Hernandez is one player that has made it perfectly clear. The fan base, he loves the Los Angeles fan base. That was one of the main things that he said, during the press conference of why he wanted to come back. I can't remember the exact quote that he said, but the other thing that stuck out to me is when he was talking about the organization in itself. He said that he's never been treated as a player the way that the Dodgers organizations treat him and his family. And so that's another big kudos to the organization and the fan base of LA.
Yeah, I think everything that he shared is something that we've kind of already known about the Dodgers, where they are different than every other, franchise out there. There's a reason why a lot of players will take team-friendly deals. They'll defer money to just come play in the city of Los Angeles for not only a chance to win a championship and get their name out there, but to kind of just reinvent themselves or just feel comfortable playing. And I think Teoscar Hernandez and Dave Roberts kind of alluded to it, where everything that they want in a ball player, Teoscar Hernandez kind of checks the
Hmm.
box off in terms of, being engaged, being a clubhouse leader, you know, clutch. I mean, we saw that time and time again. I mean, I think the Dodgers posted, all of our walk-offs of 2024. I think he
Yeah.
was involved in quite a few of those and quite a few comeback victories. Teoscar Hernandez was a big part of what the 2024 Dodgers were. He was a big part of their identity, and I saw it up close in the clubhouse, when the team traveled, and I saw it, watching the game with my eyes on the TV or in the stands. He was a very impactful player, and for someone to make that much of an impact on a 1-year contract just means it shows you how big of an impact he was, not only to the players in that clubhouse or their coaches, but to the fans themselves. And I think the big thing out of all of this is that, he even mentioned that he possibly turned down offers around 5 to 6 million
Yeah.
more dollars elsewhere just to return to the Dodgers. Maybe he could have had, 4th year guaranteed. We don't really entirely know. From my understanding, what I've heard and what I've seen is that a lot of teams that said that were reported interested were never really heavily involved, specifically the Boston Red Sox. Apparently, they were never really at the finish line in all of it. But when you hear a guy take a pay cut, I guess, to come back to Los Angeles, I mean, that just shows how the organization is being ran right now. And I think that's the underlying reason why a lot of fans around baseball are mad, because their team can't offer the same amenities that the Dodgers can right now.
Oh, completely agree. I mean, not just the front office, but Dave Roberts, as the coach, everybody's saying, which I agree with, is, he's the player's coach. He's a smart guy. He knows the game of baseball. He's played it as a player. He understands what they're going through on a daily basis, and he can make his moves in regards to that benefits the player. And the front office has been doing this for a while now and putting together a team, that at least goes into October, and makes the playoffs most of the years. So the Dodgers organization, is top notch. Everybody knows that. A lot of fans, a lot of other organizations kind of see what they're doing, and I don't think they could really emulate that. The Dodgers have something that other teams just don't have, and other organizations just don't have. Um, and I don't think it could be matched by anybody else. And I think that is a big desire for a lot of the players, to come in here because when they're out there on the fields and they're doing practice before the games and they're throwing the ball around and they're talking with one another, I'm almost sure that that's part of the conversation of, hey man, this organization really does it really well here, and we're really happy here.
Yeah, word of mouth can go a long way, and I think that's why we've seen, you know, it can always unravel quickly when you bring in a revolving door of players like the Dodgers have the past couple years. They take in a lot of reclamation projects. They take in a lot of chances on some players around the league, but they also bring in a lot of star talent. It's not
Hmm.
in a traditional sense like some other teams where they'll keep the same player group for 5 or 6 years. That really just doesn't really happen anymore, and the Dodgers are no exception to that. They have the 26-man roster this upcoming season is totally different for the most part than it was this past year, and that's credit to the Dodgers continuing to add and try to get better and try to improve on themselves. And that's what Teoscar Hernandez also alluded to as well. It's like, why wouldn't you want to come back here? Why wouldn't you want to re up with the Dodgers again? You're in your 30s right now. Clearly, the time to win is with this organization, because he even said himself that this team, on paper at least, is better
Yes,
than the one it was last year. Do you agree with
yes,
that statement?
I agree with that statement with the moves that the Dodgers have made so far, and they've made some exceptional moves. Adding Snell, to a Conforto, also bringing back Teoscar, re-signing Triton, also. There are a couple more moves that I hope that I see them make, that we could leave off for another podcast. But yeah, the Dodgers have done a great thing. But the one thing, the Dodgers can make all the moves, and every organization can make all the moves that they want. The players have got to stay healthy. That's the whole thing. Our pitchings, we've been bit by the injury bug, you know, for our starting pitchers for the past 2 to 3 years. You know, we can have Blake Snell, we can have Glass now, we can have Yamamoto, we can go out and get Sasaki, but they gotta stay healthy. And will that 6-man rotation help out with that? It possibly could, but like I say, players got to stay healthy,
Yeah.
throughout the whole year, especially going into October.
I definitely agree with that sentiment. Me and Jacob were talking about this on the last episode, where it's like when you look at the starting rotation, health is the big key. You look at the position player side, the Dodgers have had their share of injuries on that end as well. Freddie
Hmm.
Freeman was banged up. Otani's coming off multiple surgeries over the past couple of years. Mookie Betts with a broken wrist last year. I mean, like, the Dodgers are kind of getting everything thrown at them, but the way that they've built this team with the amount of depth that they have, you could lose a Mookie Betts for a couple weeks. You can lose a Freddie Freeman. You can get, a Max Muncy that's not 100%, and they'll still be fine. They'll still run it out, win 95 to over 100 games, and make the postseason. And I think that is why Teoscar Hernandez may have had more years. He may have had more money, but at the end of the day, he played 1 year with the Dodgers. Clearly, your mind's going to change a little bit when you win the World Series with that team. You'll be like, yeah, I want to
Hmm.
play here for the rest of my career. We just won the World Series. But in just a short amount of time, over a couple months, the Dodgers organization, their fans, the coaches, they won Teoscar over to come back on a multi-year deal. Looking back at his 2023 or 2024 season, it was really good. A 272, 339, 501 slash, got an 840 OPS, career high 33 home runs, 99 RBIs, and he hit 250 in the postseason. And that's with an abysmal NLCS and clutch hits in the NLDS and the World Series. When you look at what the roster's shaping up to, it sounds like Brandon Gomes, the Dodgers general manager, alluded to that he will be the full-time right fielder. That's
Hmm.
Hernandez's natural position. And Michael Conforto, who we haven't really talked much about this offseason, it looks like he's going to be more of an everyday bat, and it looks like he's going to be in left field. When you're looking at that outfield arrangement, are you okay with that? Would you make any changes to that? And then on top of that, you're looking at center field. Obviously, Tommy Evans there, but do you see anybody else, tipping their hat into that ring?
The outfield's a little bit tricky for me. I'm really happy that Teoscar's going to go to right field. That's his natural spot. He feels comfortable there. I've been critical of him, playing left field, during the regular season, on some of the plays that he was going for, and some of the fumbles that he had. Um, I don't know a whole lot about Conforto, so I need to dive into him and how he is as an outfielder. I know that he's good and he's got a good decent bat. The question that I have is center field. Who's going to be that starting center field? Is Tommy Edman going to be there? I wish that they'd give Andy Pages a little bit more of a runway. Hopefully, he'll be more of a platoon with Conforto, and because he is a corner outfielder. Andy Pages is more comfortable either on right or left field. The center field thing. I don't disagree with a lot of people when they were, I don't want to say bashing him, during the regular season. But he's a good outfielder with a above average strong arm. And the Phillies seen that, on that throw to third base, when he from right field. So, I don't want to leave out Paez in regards to that. James Outman is another question mark, that's there. How's he going to look in spring training? Because what was it, 2022? The spring training of 2022 is when he actually did his breakout, and he was killing it in spring training. Watching him in there every single game, and that's why he was able to be, the starting center fielder. James Outman is a really good, center fielder. He's fast. He can read the ball. He can jump at the wall. He makes really good plays. He lays himself out. He'll bash himself up against the wall, to make a play. So that's the center fielder that we're going to have, that we're going to need, and that's the question that I have.
Yeah, and then before I give my opinions on the outfield alignment right now, Dennis Gonzalez, I like the question. Mike and I are definitely going to talk about it. He's bringing up whether if the Dodgers are going to keep Lux, trade him along with Taylor as well. That's definitely going to come up in our next topic when we talk about Hyeseong Kim. But if you look at the Dodgers outfield, it's depth. They have a lot, and that's even with
Yeah,
moving Mookie Betts to the infield right now. They still have a lot of outfielders. They have a lot of infielders right now. They just have a lot of players on the roster right now. I'm very curious to see how they crunch this down to 26 players. I'm curious to how it looks come October, because we know things can happen. And I still don't think the Dodgers are done. There's a lot of avenues for them to be creative, which we can get in today or maybe in the future as well. But when I look at the outfield, Conforto is interesting because last season he played really well away from, the Giants
yeah,
Stadium, which is known to be a pitcher's park. I mean, and he's a left-handed hitter. It's just hard to hit there. I mean, there's a reason why pitchers have a really good history in that park. He had better splits away. He also actually had reverse splits for the first time in his career. He actually hit lefties better than righties. I don't know if that's going to be a trend the Dodgers want to continue if they plan on platooning him somewhat. Obviously, with him being a left-handed bat, he's going to start majority against, right-handed pitchers. Maybe they still keep him out there against lefties. Like I said, they give him a 1-year, $17 million deal. That's not bench player money, guys. It may
right.
be today in today's game where joining a team like the Dodgers where they have so much depth, maybe he is just a role player making $17 million. I'm not sure, but it seems like the Dodgers are confident that he's going to play up really well, average to middle of the pack defense, but he's at a corner spot and he's in left field. That's usually where you're like, hey, let's put our worst outfielder or our worst defender out there because he can hit. Dodgers are betting on him to hit. He's betting on himself to kind of in the similar situation that Teoscar Hernandez
Right.
was, a
Yeah.
down year his previous season, taking a 1-year prove-it deal. Maybe he can do something this year to get a multi-year offer somewhere else, or maybe if he has a year like Teoscar, he re-ups with the Dodgers because it went so well. Andy Paz is a guy that I definitely want to see succeed. I don't really see him as a center fielder. I agree with you in that regard. I mean, he came up as a corner outfielder. They kind of just put him in center field for a need. And then the
Mhm.
other guy in this whole thing along with James Outman, who it seems like every passing day, his spot on the big league roster just is going away more and more. So is he a trade piece? Is he just depth for the minor leagues in case of an injury if it pops up and they can plug and play him up here at the big league level? But the big one is Dalton Rushing, because it's like, we saw the Dodgers DFA catcher today. Obviously, they're not going to do that with Rushing because he's the number 1 overall prospect in the Dodgers farm system, and he is poised to make his breakout this year. they put him in left field last year in AAA for most of his starts. So it's like, do they see him as an outfielder as well, with Will Smith behind the dish for the next 9 seasons? I'm not sure what their thought process is with all of those players, but I think it's a good problem to have if you're a Dodger fan or and you're the Dodgers front office, because you're kind of like just pick and play the hottest hand. And one of the other things that I've seen, that I forget where I saw it, but it does make sense, where it's like when you have these many players, it basically builds a competition between one another within the
Yes.
team that also ends up helping the team play better. So that way, these guys are playing right now. Who's going to be on the postseason roster? I want to be the best guy. I want to be on that 26-man roster. I don't want to be left off. I mean, we saw last season to an extent, Jason Hayward was the odd man out. They ended up having to DFA him, and he ended up getting released and going to the Houston Astros. He was the odd man out, and he was a serviceable outfielder for a postseason Astros team that, they lost in the wild card round, but he immediately gets picked up and he's in the starting lineup starting every day for the Astros. That's the Dodgers dilemma right now. They have
Mhm.
MLB starters that are on their bench right now, and I just think it's a great problem to have. And I'm interested to see what they do over the next couple weeks and months, especially in spring training.
Oh, definitely. I couldn't agree with everything that you just said. I do, you know, I kind of chuckle a little bit when everybody brings up Dalton Rushing out in left field. I watch MILB on a daily, especially when the Comet, their new Comet's name, when they play. I've seen Dalton play, a number of times out in left field. I'm not saying he's not a bad left fielder, but he's got a lot to learn out there. He played more first base in his time in the minors than he ever has, playing in the outfield. So he's got a lot to learn out there, and to bring a young kid in there and throw him out there, and say you're going to be playing left field in the major leagues right now. What does that do for him? Especially if he starts to struggle. You know, I don't think it's a very great idea. For him to go out there and play left field, especially when we have others. Especially in the minors that are much better than he is out in left field. That can hit the ball, just as good as Dalton Rushing, can. He is the number one prospect. I don't disagree with that. I love Dalton Rushing. I met him a couple of times, during spring training. I've talked to him a few times. He's a very nice kid. Um, I just believe that his role is either a catcher or playing first base. But we have Freddie Freeman there, and I think the one that's there is Austin Barnes is the one that's holding his spot. You know, once Austin Barnes leaves, maybe by next year, then we'll see Dalton Rushing in there. It'd be nice to see him come in, and get some playing time, be able to make his adjustments that he's going to need to make, as a hitter, because he is an amazing hitter. He can strike the ball very hard. He can put it in play. He can put it in the gaps, and he has the strength and the ability to put it over the wall.
Yeah, Rushing's definitely a guy. We've had him on the show before last season around spring training, and he just looks like a good hitter. I watched him play in college, with the Cardinals, the Louisville Cardinals. So clearly, there's a history of building catchers there. That's where Will Smith went.
Yep.
Rushing came from there. Henry Davis, who was taken number 1 overall a couple seasons back, he hasn't panned out yet, but he was taken there. It's going to be interesting to see what the Dodgers do with Rushing, but in terms of Teoscar Hernandez, obviously the re-signing's big for him. It's big for the Dodgers. It's big for their fans to get a guy who was so just emotional about just the city of Los
Yeah.
Angeles and the team. I think it's great that we have this guy back. So I'm excited to see more Dodgers jerseys with Hernandez on their back there with 37 gold trim jersey. That's just getting me excited right now. But for anybody
All,
that's new to the channel, we do have the full interview up on our YouTube page right now, so be sure to subscribe and check that out. We also have on DodgersBeat.com, Mike, he already mentioned, he wrote up kind of like some important quotes from Teoscar, Dave Roberts, and Dodgers general manager Brandon Gones. But if you guys want to check those out, if you were able to watch the press conference live, be sure to do that. Any other comments before we move on, Mike?
super excited to have him back, pumped, for this team, and I love seeing that infectious smile that he has. I'm glad it's back on the team.
Yeah, so basically within the same time frame, like hours within each other. Teoscar Hernandez was always supposed to have his press conference today, but then the Dodgers ended up showing reported interest in KBO utility infielder Hyeseong Kim. I wrote about it early this morning where I was like, all right, well, it seems like there's reports that the Dodgers have apparently offered him a contract. We'll see where that goes. Don't know how legit the rumor is, but it seems like more and more people are seeing more and more rumors of contracts going up because he was supposed to sign today. The reason why he did it is because his deadline for his posting date was today at 2
Yep.
p.m. Pacific time. So he ends up getting that done. The Dodgers actually out of nowhere, surprising to me, surprising to a lot of other people, they're the ones that land him. It is a 3-year, $12.5 million deal with options that could turn it into a 5-year, $22 million deal. Before we get into the stats, before we get into the player, and before we get into the fit, when you see the contract, you see what the Dodgers signed him for. Are you surprised that they targeted Kim? And are you surprised that he signed for under what he was projected to get in free agency? Because MLB Trade Rumors, they do their yearly, predictions. They pegged him at getting anywhere from 3 to 4, almost
Yeah.
$30 million.
I was a bit surprised. I shouldn't say a bit. I was a lot surprised, that he signed with the Dodgers. I was going to write an article on him about 3 months ago, but decided not to do it because I didn't see a place for him. We have Mookie Betts, who there was the shortstop. We have Miguel Rojas as a shortstop. We have Gavin Lux, playing second base. And then we have Tommy Edmonds, that could fill in for second base. We have, Kike Hernandez, that's the utility player that plays, first, second, third, in shortstop. We have Chris Taylor that's another utility player that was in there. So I was like, wow. So, what's he going to do? Kim is a very legit player, especially in the KBO. He is a legit player. He's a legit hitter. He's a
I
slash
looked
hitter.
into more of his stats writing about him today.
Yeah.
And he is legit. And the big question, and I know a lot of people put it out there, Jeff Spiegel from Dodger Blue pretty much put it out there. KBO hitters don't really translate well, at least in their first season coming to the
Hmm.
MLB. If you look at, Ji-Ho Lee before he ended up getting the shoulder injury, his WRC plus was under 100, like way under 100, like I think like 50 or 60, something along those lines. You look at, Kim's stats for this past season, it's arguably his best year. Hit 326.
Yes.
He's entering his age 26 season. He's a career 300 hitter, 150 doubles, 39 triples, 37 home runs. And the big thing for me, stolen bases and elite defense. He's a 3-time Golden Gloves award, which before everybody kind of gets misconception about it, basically what that award is compared, it's not like the Gold Glove Award in the MLB in the States. It's not awarded to the best defender. It's just awarded to the best overall player. He's won that 3 times. He's the only Korean baseball player, as you mentioned, Mike, off air,
Yes.
to win it at both second base and shortstop. But also, he's won back-to-back Fielding Glove awards, which was just introduced in the KBO, I think 2 seasons ago. So I just feel like he's an all-around hitter or all-around player. And you were mentioning slap hitter, and that's something the Dodgers really haven't added to their game.
Well, also one other statistic that needs to be mentioned in 2021, he led the KBO in stolen bases. He was the leader, for the full year for stolen bases. He is a slash hitter, so if Dodger fans and everybody needs to realize that, he's not somebody who's going to put the ball over the wall. He's somebody who, like I've been talking about for years, that this Dodger teams need. And I know, Cody and I have been talking about it, quite a bit. He's the player that's going to put the ball in play and move the runners around. And he's going to get on base, and he's going to go from first to second, from second to third, just by stealing the ball, because he's got elite speed. His glove is amazing. His play at shortstop is, I don't want to say unbelievable, but like really good. His play at second base is really good. So it's going to put, the Dodgers organization, I'm trying to figure out what are they going to do with Gavin Lux.
Yeah, I mean that's the question right now. What's funnier about with the whole Kim thing before we get into the the debate of Lux bets, like what's the infield looking like, is friend of the show Jiho Yu. We had him on talk about the Korean series last March, and when the Dodgers played their exhibition games against some Korean baseball teams, and on one of those teams was Kim. And
Hmm.
Dave Roberts himself, as far back as last year, said, our scouts like the second baseman, just the way his body moves. There's some life to the bat, and defensively, he's made some nice plays out there. And a lot of sources in the Korean leagues, they said, as soon as the Dodgers showed that little bit of interest and Dave Roberts made those comments, it was just a foregone conclusion that Kim was going to choose them over every other club. And there was a lot of reports out there that the Dodgers didn't make the highest offer, that the Angels did. Those were later debunked by Jeff Fletcher from the Orange County Register. But there is some truth that the Dodgers do get some of these players on hometown discounts, especially if they really want to play there. I mean, Teoscar Hernandez earlier just said that he took a couple $1 million off just so he could return to Los Angeles. When you're looking at the overall fit of the team right now, Brandon Gomes is saying that he's going to be more of a utility player, but I don't see him coming to the States to get under 200 at bats. Obviously, the guaranteed $12.5 million is nice, but do you see a more full-time role with him right now?
I don't understand, the role of utility player. He's not an outfielder. He plays the infield. He hasn't played, third base, all that much. His main go-to is second and shortstop. We already have Mookie Betts, at shortstop. We have Gavin Lux right now at shortstop, at second base. I've already mentioned, the backups and who come in and play, when they have an off day. Is Kim going to come in and be that guy, and just play, during, the off times, when Gavin Lux, is having an off day? Or I don't mean like an off day in terms of batting, like it's his day off to get some rest because they're on a 6-game series or whatever. Is he going to come in and fill in for Mookie, during that time frame? Spending that much money for that type of a player, because like I said, he is an elite fielder. He is good, and he's got a very strong arm. Especially at the shortstop position, his lateral movement, his side to side, everything is, about him. With his speed, he gets to the ball quick and fast, and props himself up and makes a good throw down to first base. So it's hard to. I don't really understand the utility portion, of that. I would, personally, I see him more as an everyday player at second base.
Yeah, I mean, I guess they throw the word utility when you put in a couple innings at a different position than your normal, everyday role. Obviously, I think the Dodgers signed this guy to be a middle infielder. Whether that's
Hmm.
shortstop or second base remains to be seen when we come, to spring training. I still think they're going to run out the Mookie Betts at shortstop situation because of my head, I think it's more of a Mookie wants the challenge to get shortstop right. He was drafted as a shortstop. He played his entire life as a shortstop, got switched to second base, wanted to be the Red Sox full-time second baseman, but they had Dustin Pedroia blocking. And then once he gets called up, he has to convert to a right fielder, ends up becoming like an six-time, eight-time Gold Glove Award winner out there. Finally gets a chance. The Dodgers start moving him back to second base in 23, a little bit in 22, and he ends up falling in love with the infield again. So it really just raises the questions. All right, what are they going to do with Gavin Lux? Because I'm one of the biggest Gavin Lux fans out there, but even I've kind of run my patience where it's like, if the Dodgers aren't valuing him and other teams around the league aren't valuing him, why do other Dodger fans value him so high? Because clearly I think could just be a change of scenery thing. Maybe Lux just needs a change to go to a different team, get a new opportunity, full time at bats. Not doesn't have to really worry about the pressure. But then we saw him in the second half, and he ended up turning into the prospect that we all wanted to be. And I think that's that's my biggest issue with Gavin Lux is that he's just not consistent. He's either extremely hot or is he extremely cold. I mean, in the first half last year, he was borderline unplayable. He had a WRC plus under 100. He was one of the
Hmm.
worst hitters in the league, and his defense, you know, even before the knee injury, was kind of subpar. I mean, he's made a couple flashy plays. I mean, even in the World Series, a couple diving catches at second base, but it's not really the most demanding position to get, well in the infield. And I just don't think the offense outweighs everything else. He's not a base stealer anymore. Average defense, not that much of a power hitter. So, and he's not much of an average hitter either. One of the things that goes well for him is that he just doesn't strike out a lot. But we've also seen stretches of him in a,
Is that
in a
right?
in the ruts where he's kind of an automatic out there. And I think the Dodgers, it was reported that they were throwing him around in there in the potential Devin Williams trade. I think once you start getting your name thrown out there in trades, that's kind of a sign that the team's ready to move on from you. And the signing of Kim just makes that door open a little bit wider. They're saying, hey, you either got to start playing to be the player that you wanted to be, or you're either going to lose at bats or you're going to lose a spot on this team. So when you look at this right now, you're saying Kim's an everyday second baseman. Right now, Gavin Lux is penciled in every day at second base, according to Brandon Gomes. Do you believe Gomes in this situation?
I see Lux being dealt. I see him being dealt at some point, and Kim being the everyday second baseman, along with Tommy Edman. It all depends, in regards to that. Because Kim, he's going to have to get used to playing in the major leagues, because it is, like you stated already, it is a fact. There's some adjustments that are there, even though he did take Bobby Miller and hit that ball to the wall, and got a double out, against him. You know, he's going to need some time to adjust. Any of these overseas players that come in from Japan, and one thing that fans really need to realize and understand, especially with the pitching portion of it, is the balls are different over there in the NPB. The balls are a little bit more tackier. The seams on them are different, so the pitchers can grip the ball a little bit easier. That's why their spin rate is so much better. And they have so much action on the ball, when it comes out of their hand. They don't have that when they come to the major leagues. So pitchers like Yamamoto, pitchers like, Sasaki, if we get him. Sasaki has a really good spin rate. His pitches are nasty, but he had a little bit sticky ball, in the NPB, and he's going to need to make adjustments. So Dodger fans and everybody needs to realize that adjustments are going to need to be made, especially with Kim's. If he's going to become an everyday second baseman, he's going to make those adjustments. And again, he's a slash batter. He doesn't hit for power. So it may be a little bit more easier for him. Because he puts it in the gaps and he can put it where in between, second and short, and hit it in those holes. So I think he's going to do fine. I think he's going to be a good player. I've watched him play a few times, because I have a stick to where I can get, the KBO and the NPB games, on my computer and stuff. So I've seen him play, quite a few times. He's a really good player, and this is a really good. It was a surprising pickup to me, but it's a really good pickup.
I think it's surprising if you're under the assumption that the Dodgers are still planning on Lux being the everyday guy, because I just don't see a spot for Lux to be an everyday guy, because most of the time, because of him being a left-handed hitter, he's going to get a bulk of the starts of the year because most pitchers happen to be right-handed. So boom, you're going to be in the lineup most of the week, probably 6 out of the 7 days or 5 out of the
Mhm.
whatever, how many games you're playing. You're going to pencil in Luck. But Kim's also a left-handed hitter. So it's like, all right, maybe he should be getting these bats instead of Lux. So it comes down to his trade value. And I wrote about it a couple weeks back, where it's like a lot of fans say, well, what are you really going to get for Gavin Lux? Well, right now he's under his second year of arbitration. He's only projected to make a little bit under $3 million. And then you have him for an additional year after this season. So that's 2 full years of control, cheap control. And a lot of teams need middle infield help. He's been a decent second baseman defensively, and we've seen peaks of him being one of the best, offensive players in the Dodgers. In that stretch that I mentioned in like July, August, he was arguably the best hitter on the Dodgers with a 194 WRC plus. He kind of kept them afloat while Mookie Betts was out. Freddie Freeman had the off-field stuff, and Shohei Ohtani was a little, banged up, trying to keep everything afloat at the top of the lineup. So I think you can get something for him, and it's kind of like I mentioned, a change of scenery could do him good, and it could be good for the Dodgers as well, because if if you look at the player profile that Kim's going to be offering, it's very similar to Lux, where it's like, all right, defense, it is better. Hitting wise, it's like not much power, contact. That's kind of what Lux has gotten you at the bottom of the lineup, but maybe the Dodgers just really want to reassure their middle infield defense, because that's
Mm-hmm.
the other comment in all of this, where it's like, are you really comfortable with the Dodgers middle infield of Mookie Betts and Gavin Lux every day, or would you at least want, a plus defender at second base to kind of help Mookie Betts out a little bit?
Well, I mean, Mookie Betts and let's just say Kim is going to be the everyday second baseman, and Mookie Betts is going to be the everyday shortstop. They're going to have what's going to be, one of the biggest problems right there is the language barrier that's in there. So practice, practice, practice. Spring training is going to be big for them. Getting to know, each other's little quirks that they have, the eye movement, the eye coordination that they're going to need to develop, in regards to throwing double plays, getting to the ball, who's covering second base, all those basic fundamentals of being a middle infielder are going to be worked on. Could there be some struggles in regard for next year, especially if they let Gavin Lux go? Yeah, they could. There could be, and more likely there's going to be. There's going to be some communications that are going to be there. So it's just going to be a matter, knowing most of been following the overseas players for a long time. Their work ethic is nothing to be in question, because it's like crazy. So for him to put in the work to be able to do that, and we already know Mookie Beck's work ethic, what he did, in regards to becoming the shortstop last year, and the amount of work that he did, and putting in hours and hours and hours every day, just to make that position and be decent at it. So I think they're going to be just fine.
The other ripple of this, and I see people putting in the chat now, is what do you do with Kike Hernandez? This is the guy that everybody around the Dodgers fandom, they want him back. Clearly, he's not the best regular season player, but we all know where he shows up, and it's arguably the most important part of the season, October. We saw what he did this past year. He's still a free agent. He still made it known that he wants to return to Los Angeles. As the roster is currently constructed, Mike, do you see a potential reunion with Kike Hernandez at all? Because David Vassay even said today on Dodger Talk where, the door's not closed yet, but I'm having a hard time seeing where his fit could be as the roster stands right now.
Well, that's what I was going to say. It's hard to know where he's going to be able to fit in, especially with like you were just talking about, with the roster the way it is right now, the 40-man. There's no place for him, especially after the signing, of Sung and why am I forgetting the left fielder's name right now? Conforto, with him. So where is Kiki going to be fitting in? The only way that he's going to be fitting in the way that I see it, is if Gavin Lux or Chris Taylor gets traded.
Oh, that's the other part of all of this. It's like you can only have so many utility, players on your roster, I guess, because what is your stance on Chris Taylor? I know there's fans that want him traded. They want to get rid of that $15 million or $13 million that he's owed this season. They want to get him off the roster. And I'm like, hey, look, I see the argument for it, because he was not good last year. The only time you saw him on the field during the October run was defensive replacement for Teoscar Hernandez out there. And even then, if you look at some of the advanced metrics for Chris Taylor, with age, defensive stuff starts to go down, and he was
Mm-hmm.
no exception to that either. He was bad at second. He was okay, I guess, in left field. We didn't really see him anywhere else. It was just one or the other. Doesn't really get many starts at third base anymore. Obviously doesn't start in center or get starts at shortstop. And right field was kind of locked down with either Mookie Betts or Teoscar Hernandez or Jason Hayward. So are you on the camp of trying to get rid of Taylor at all costs? Because it seems like right now, I mean, it's more of a burden than anything to have him on the roster. And that pains me to say, because he was such a vital part of the team in the late 20 like 10s, especially that
Mm-hmm.
2017, 18 and 19 and 20 teams. But what are your thoughts on Taylor? Do you try to move him if possible?
My thoughts on Taylor are the same thoughts for Bobby Miller that I have. The Dodgers made the wrong trade. I think the Dodgers should have traded, Chris Taylor to Boston and kept kept Kike Hernandez the same way that I think the Dodgers should have kept Ryan Pepio and got rid of Bobby Miller and sent him over to Florida. That's my thoughts on Chris Taylor. I like him. He's like you said, he's done good. In the early 2000s. When the Dodgers, 2017, 2018. He did good for the team there. But I've never really been a big Chris Taylor fan. I've been more of a Kike Hernandez fan. Um, because I just think his drive is a little bit more, his versatility is a little bit more. He's got he's got better speed um, than Chris Taylor does, and he shows up a lot more and more consistent in October.
Yeah, and I think, I don't fault the Dodgers for re-signing Taylor to what they did after 21 because you looked at the postseason he did. He made the All-Star team for the first time in his career. He was one of the better players on the team that was stacked with a lot of talent. So it's like
Hmm.
I don't fault them for giving the contract. Obviously, they're hitting themselves in the ass on the whole deal, especially when you look at it in retrospect. And Kike Hernandez at the time after 2020, he goes into free agency. He wants to be an everyday player, and the Dodgers didn't have the opportunity for him to be an everyday player. They were counting on Lux being better and being a full-time player. They had Corey Seager, they still had Max Muncy, and then they ended up going out and, they still had all these guys. Justin Turner was at third base at the time. So there was just no spot for Kike to be an everyday guy. And then he goes to Boston and then he kind of ends up not being an everyday guy there, ends up having a
Hmm.
really bad 23, ends up getting traded back to LA. And it's like I've been saying it, Kike Hernandez and the Dodgers do better together than when they are apart. So I can see why the Dodgers and Hernandez still have some kindling to a reunion here to run it back. Clearly, he's a postseason player and that plays here. And I just feel like at this point in his career, he knows what's up. We saw how late it took him to sign last year. I mean, the team's already broke for camp. They had to deal with the whole Manuel Margot situation. Like, do you want him? Do you want to trade him? Like
Hmm.
between him and Hernandez. And they ended up going with Hernandez. And I think at the end of the day, if they had to choose between one player and another, they still may go with Kike just because of what he's done for the team the past couple of years. So it remains to be seen because I don't think he fits on the team as the roster stands right now. But say you get rid of Chris Taylor, there you go. You got his replacement right there.
Oh yeah, yeah. And I actually see Kike Hernandez signing sometime when spring training starts.
Yeah, I mean, that's definitely going to be something to keep an eye on, especially with a player of his caliber. It seems like he's holding out for a contender, so we'll see what happens there. But the
Hmm.
whole other side effect for the Hyeseong Kim deal is the Dodgers had to make room on the 40-man roster for it to happen. After the Teoscar Hernandez deal was made official earlier this afternoon, it put the 40-man roster complete at 40 players. So to make the Kim signing official, they had to DFA somebody, and they ended up DFAing a surprising name at first glance when I looked at it on X. Diego Cartaya. He ends up getting DFA'd. The 23-year-old former top prospect ends up not ever making his debut for the Dodgers and is now kind of in limbo right now, whether he's going to be put on waivers or traded or just straight up released or accepting assignment. We'll see what happens in the next couple of days, but Mike, I know you're a big minor league guy. I'm also a quote unquote semi prospect hugger, I guess. There's some of these guys I hold dearly to my heart. Cartaya, I thought was going to be a guy. Are you shocked that of his downfall or his drop off? And are you shocked that they chose him to be the guy that bit the bullet?
I'm more shocked on Diego's downfall, especially coming from the Arizona League, going into Rancho. Diego had probably one of his better years when he played for the Loons. Had a really good year when he played for Tulsa. Got injured and never really recovered after that, especially when he went to Oklahoma. So I'm not surprised about the move and that they DFA'd him. Diego has been on the, I don't want to say downfall, but he's been slipping down, quite a bit on his stats since his time with the Loons, and I think that was in 2021. So like this year, he had 76 hits. He only had 11 home runs with 52 RBIs. He did have 2 stolen bases, and he had an average of 221, this year, playing in AAA. The biggest thing, for Diego, he can frame the plate very well, but the knock on him has always, especially being at Rancho and when he was at the Loons, was his ability to call a really good game. Um, that's one thing that Dalton Rushing has. Rushing has and Hunter Fiducia has. They have to be the ability to be able to call the game without the coach's help. Diego needed that. Diego needed some of the coaching, to help him out. You can see him when he's behind the plate. He's looking over, at the dugout at the coaches, for a call. You don't see that much, if at all, with Dalton Rushing and with Hunter Fiducia. So that's always been a knock on Diego, and that's something that he's worked very hard on, and he got a lot better on. But it's a bummer. I like Diego Cartaya again. I talked to him quite a bit. In the backfields. During spring training. Super nice kid. I hope he does well. He has the ability to become a really good everyday catcher for a major league team. Just like, I think the biggest shock for me, and something that I'm still getting over, that my wounds are still healing from, is the Keibert Ruiz, trade. I think that hurts me more than, than the Diego Cartaya one. So it is a bummer for him. But I know that he's going to do well for another team once he gets into their minor league system. Just like you stated, with some other players already, a change of scenery, will help out. Kind of like with Gavin Lux. He's so undecided on where he's going to be playing at when he thought that he was going to be the everyday shortstop, and then they move him over there and they bring Mookie in, and there's indecision. A change of scenery for Diego Cartaya will also, benefit him well. And don't forget, Diego does have a very strong arm and can put that ball into second base pretty good.
Yeah, I mean, defensively, you look at Cartaya, that was probably the best thing to go with him. Whether it's calling the game is probably the issue, and that's something that I've heard of as well, where, most of the time it's catcher pitcher, especially at the major league level. They're the ones calling the game. Rarely do you see a manager say, yeah, no, we want the fastball, we want the curveball. Rare that you see that in today's game. It's usually, that's the way baseball's played. It's pitcher, catcher, batter. That's kind of the game within the game. Hitting wise, Cartaya really didn't do much, especially his last 2 years. I mean, if you look at his AAA numbers this past year, 208 batting average, 643 OPS. I mean, that's just really not going to get it done, especially, in some hitter friendly parks in the minor leagues where he just didn't ever take off. And if you look at his 2023, it was a really bad season for him that year. He hit 189, 29% strikeout rate, which is just absurd, in only 93 games in Double A. Didn't have any improvement in Triple A either. That season, for how bad it was, it knocked him off the MLB Top 100. So, and he just never recovered after that. And the thing that really did it in for Cartaya, like, he was added to the 40-man roster after 2022 because of Rule 5 protection. So clearly the Dodgers weren't going to let him get, taken by another team in the Rule 5 draft like he almost certainly would have if they didn't protect him. But you keep him lingering around. You're hoping that within a year or two, he can be what Dalton Rushing is right now, because Rushing pretty much overlapped him. Not only did he overlap him in the rankings, but he's now in the top 50 of MLB prospects across the league, and he's the new Dodgers #1 overall prospect. And a lot of people around baseball, especially in the Dodgers side of things, they expect Rushing to make his debut at least some point this upcoming season, whether that's being a catcher, filling in for first base, or potentially in left field if they want to, get nasty out there. But the Dodgers historically, especially over the last, 30 years, I mean, it just seems like they're a catching factory. They just produce so many good catchers. Like you mentioned Ruiz, it seemed like they flipped him for nothing. Well, they didn't flip him for nothing, but they just flipped him and then replaced him immediately after. You get Cartaya. They don't get anything for him as of right now. I imagine he will get traded in the next couple days. We'll see what he gets in terms of value. Whether the one theory out there, I'm interested to see if you agree with it, is maybe trading him for some of that international pool money to help, load up the Brinks truck for Roki Sasaki. We'll see if that happens. But it's not the first time the Dodgers moved on from one of their top, young catchers. I mean, look at last season at the trade deadline. They trade away what? Thyron Lorenzo?
Lorenzo.
Yeah, they traded him away for Jack Flaherty. They signed Will Smith to a massive 10-year deal. For the most part of that deal, I think he's going to be in the backstop. So it's like we can only carry 2 catchers on the team. And right now it looks like it's going to be Will Smith and Dalton Rushing of the future. After the next couple of years, we'll see what goes on. But they can always draft another catcher. They can always develop another catcher. They can sign a young, international free agent as a catcher out of like Venezuela, Mexico, where you name it. And they'll be fine. And Cartaya just never worked out. And it was surprising for me. It was a little shocking, but it goes to show there is limitations of being a prospect hugger, because Cartaya was a name that was thrown around in a lot of trades back then, whether it was the Juan Soto trade in 22, there was multiple packages that Cartaya's name specifically was named in, and the Dodgers, that's the name of the game. That's the gamble with these prospects, where you can hold on to them and hope they pan out, but not everybody's going to be a Corey Seager, Cody Bellinger, Jock Peterson, in that era. And we're seeing a lot of the Dodgers position player prospects kind of miss in recent years. The 2 biggest faces of that right now are Cartaya and Miguel Vargas.
No doubt about it. And I do agree with you. I think that they deal him for international money. I think they want to build that international money so they can make a bigger run, for Sasaki.
Yeah, I mean, we'll see what happens. I mean, I wish Cartaya well. We've had him on the show before a few times. We've gotten to interview him. And you mentioned he's just a great guy. He's a really good defensive catcher. Besides the game calling, he has a really good arm. He has a really good sense of the game behind the plate, athletic. The one thing that Rushing I mentioned earlier that he's trying to improve on is his defense. It's just that every level that Rushing's gone up, his hitting has gotten better. So he's developing, where Cartaya, whether it was for injury, inconsistencies, he just wasn't developing in the hitting side of things. And that's I just feel like Rushing's development kind of accelerating the past 2 years is really what did Cartaya in.
Well, Rushing accelerated past Cartaya and Fiducia, so he went, straight from, the Loons, to Tulsa, and, and came up into OKC, and he's just in my opinion, Rushing is the better catcher out of all of them, in the minors right now, especially in the Dodgers organization.
And Jacob put it in the chat where it's kind of shocking. That's where the Dodgers are at right now. They made a statement. They said Hunter Fiducia is a better catcher option than Cartaya as it stands right now. And we got a little cup of tea.
I agree with that.
Hunter in the show this past year, couple spot starts, kind of a pinch hitting appearances, but the Dodgers, he's older. He's been in the minor leagues for a good chunk of time right now, and they opted to keep him on the 40-man rather than Cartaya and let him try to fix whatever it is. Because at the end of the day, he's a 23-year-old player. A lot of teams are going to eat that up on the waiver market or the trade market for him, which is why I don't think he's gonna last long on the market right now. But
he won't. He'll
are you surprised on Hunter being the guy that they still trust over him?
Oh no, I'm not surprised at all. Hunter Fiducia has always been a better catcher than Diego. His arm isn't as strong as Diego's is, in my opinion, but he does catch a bigger. He does catch a better game than Diego has, and his hitting's a little bit more consistent. Fiducia does have some power, but I don't disagree with that.
All right, so I want to end today's episode on an article that you kind of wrote on and highlighted, and that is that the Dodgers signed a 16-year-old Mexican pitcher, Brian Lara. What details do you have of this kid? From what I read about him in your article and kind of abroad, is that He's got a lot of nasty stuff, breaking pitches, but his fastball is kind of the cream of the crop right now. Anywhere from 90 to 92 miles per hour as a teenager seems special. But what else can you tell me about the guy?
New kid just came up. I did some research on him. When he first came into the academy, the Bravos Code Academy in Mexico, he was only throwing it into the low to mid 80s. And last year was the first year that he actually increased his velocity to the 90 to 92 miles an hour as a 16-year-old. So he increased his his velocity quite a bit just in a matter of 1 year. His secondary pitches are above average in regards to a pitcher. Um, One thing that the organization is going to do for him from the scout. There's a scout down in Mexico who stated that he will make 4 trips to the Dominican Republic, where he will finish up on some polishing of some certain physical and technical issues. And those technical issues are working more on his curveball, his sinker, his changeup, and his curveball, sinker, and changeup. So those are the things that they're going to be working on. Once he makes those starts over in the DR, then he'll be sent back over to the States, where I kind of see him more going towards the Arizona League right off the bat, just for him to get his feet underneath him, get familiar with the organization, and then maybe after 2026 and how well he does over in the Arizona League, that he gets moved up to the new stadium in Ontario with Rancho.
Yeah, I mean, if you're a Dodger fan, you're looking at this guy and you're circling his name. I mean, you might as well write it on a sticky note and put it on your fridge. You're probably not going to see him for quite a while. 16
Mhm.
years old, clearly still has to develop. He isn't even an adult yet. We probably won't even see him make, his official minor league debut in terms of like, making it to like where Rancho or anywhere else. Probably until he's like 18, 19 years old. So it's
Right.
going to be a bit. It's going to be a bit before we see him. And there's so many young international pitchers that get signed, and it's like, all right, are we going to see this guy? Obviously, a lot of things can happen, injury, development. I mean, hey, we just talked about Cartaya, where he kind of just fell off a cliff after a couple of years. We don't know what we're going to see from this guy, and hopefully we know all the best. We hope to get to know him a little bit more. I know Roger is trying to get him to come onto the show. They're planning an episode with him on the Spanish version of the podcast, to Bleed Los El Espanol. So be sure to subscribe to both, or to subscribe to the channel here. We'll have both of those uploaded on the channel. So it'll be interesting to see how everything unfolds, because the Dodgers, for better or worse, Mike, they're still a good pitching development team, because
They
I
are.
know they get a lot of slack because of the injuries, but that's kind of, it is a league-wide thing. The Dodgers just seem to be the epicenter of all of it. But I mean, the Dodgers know pitching. They know how to develop pitchers.
There's no doubt about it. I mean, the minor leagues has a lot of great pitchers in there right now. Just look at Ben Casparius, that came up, and the performance that he did, the performance that Landon Mack did. Um, you know, there's plenty of examples, that are out there, in regards to the pitchers that we have in the minors, with Oklahoma and Tulsa. Jackson Ferris is another name that people need to get to know. He's an excellent pitcher that's there. This kid that's coming out of Mexico, 16 years old. In that article that I wrote, there's a link to an Instagram that's there that you can click on and bring up. And he's actually talks talks about his pitching abilities, and he seems like a really good kid. I'm super excited to just view the interview that Roger's getting set up for it, because there's not a whole lot of information on him out there, on the web, in regards to who he is. I know that he's the only player out of I was trying to pronounce the name. If you can help me out with it, Cody, Guanajuato. He's the only player that's coming out of that hometown that is signed with a Major League Baseball team. So that's another good thing for him. He's a right-handed pitcher also. They Some people have already started to compare him to Julio Urias, but we don't know in regards to that. So we're looking forward to see him, the way that he develops as a pitcher, how he's going to fit into this organization, and when he comes up into the States and goes to the Arizona League, if he comes up next year and starts playing in the Arizona League after his 4 starts or whatever he does in the Dominican Republic, I'll be over there, reporting on him and um, getting more information for everybody on him.
Yeah, I mean, it'll be interesting to watch, and we should have the interview posted in the next week or two. So definitely make sure you guys subscribe to the channel and have the notifications turned on to be on the lookout for that. Um, it's been an interesting day. It's been a very
Yes.
busy day on DodgersB.com. I feel like me and you combined had like 4 or 5 articles posted today. I think
Yep.
Alvin, another writer, also just posted an article detailing Cartaya's DFA and why it was the right decision. So be sure to check that out as well. The website, the YouTube channel, the podcast, all of it is connected. DodgersBeat.com. I know Mike's got some work over there. I've got some work over there. It really helps us out. In terms of the YouTube side of things, we got 2 podcasts now. We got the Spanish version of the podcast, and we got the regular Bleed Those podcast with everybody you know and love. We're always breaking Dodgers news, talking about it, discussing it. We try to do live streams. We try to do weekly or multiple weekly episodes, and then once the winter's over and the season finally breaks, we're here for spring training, and the Dodgers regular season starts. We got pregame, we got postgame, we got player interviews, we got a lot of stuff planned behind the scenes as well. So be sure to like, subscribe, and definitely turn the notifications on. It really helps us out here. But other than that, Mike, anything to end on today before we close out tonight's episode?
Super excited, to see what's going to be coming up, within the next week or two. We have a very um, high profile player that's still out there who everybody's seeking to get. Excited to see what the Dodgers are going to do in regards to another reliever, possibly a closer. I think that's what the Dodgers still need. I think the infield is pretty much, pretty decent for right now. So yeah, super excited about that. I'm looking forward. I'll be spending a lot of time out in spring training this year. This will be the first year that I'll be going for pitchers and catchers to be able to grab a whole bunch of content for the channel and for our website. So I'll be out there for pitchers and catchers reporting, and then I'll be there probably for about another 2 or 3 weeks after that, just reporting on the games and the players.
Yeah, awesome. We appreciate the support, Mike. We appreciate the content that you bring us, and I appreciate you coming on today on short
Mhm.
notice to discuss all of the stuff that we had to cover today with Teoscar Hernandez, the Kim signing, Cartaya DFA. Very busy day in Dodgerland, as I mentioned at the beginning of the episode. So greatly appreciative of your work, and I'm excited for the rest of the offseason.
Me too.
Sasaki is the guy that is going to sign soon. The Dodgers are heavily linked to him, and the plethora of players that are on the Dodgers roster right now, it's making me excited because I don't think they're done. I think they probably have one more big move up their sleeve. It remains to be
Oh
seen
yeah.
if it's a trade, another free agent signing. We'll see what happens, but uh, that'll be it for this episode of the Bleed Los podcast. We will be at you next week, hopefully, for maybe another signing or maybe discussing something else with the team. But be sure, like I said, to subscribe. And this episode was brought to you by Bet Online. We'll see you next time, guys.
Have a good night, everybody.